generation of children who are going to have a shorter life expectancy.
Hey, hello, superstars.
Of our children right now.
What is going on here?
It's not only health, it's about survival and well-being of the United States as a nation.
You don't crave broccoli, and our generation has grown up craving a Big Mac. I'm going to think that there's something better for me.
Unless we're able to control this epidemic, we're going to have an abundance of chronic disease.
All of us have to be part of the solution to reduce obesity.
The weight of the nation is out of control, but we can fix that.
We don't now take this as a really urgent national priority. We are all going to pay a really serious price.
Obesity will crush the United States
Move your mic over.
in oblivion.
And ready and go.
Good morning, Stuart, Florida. Good morning, Treasure Coast. And good morning, the world. My name is Dr. Tred Rissacker, and I'm here with a message of healing, a message of hope, and a message of information that you can use today, right now, after you hear this program, to feel better, to look better, to have more vitality, more energy, to sleep better, and to just have a better experience as a human here on this world, in this world. I am a firm believer that health and wealth are equal. You can't have wealth without health, and it's hard to have, wealth without health. And too many of us, or too many of you, give up your health to get your wealth. Right? And then when you hit 60 or 70 years old or 50 or so, you end up spending your wealth to try to regain your health. And you know what? Oftentimes, it's not going to happen. You have given up the basis. Your foundation is weak. Just like a business whose foundational principles, if you want to have a business that lasts, that you can give to your children and transfer the wealth that's in the business to the next generation, you need a very strong, basic business model. And you can't have had weakness or shenanigans or trying to cheat or to try to go and circumvent, natural laws and laws of the government to try to build that business. If you do, it will fail. And health and your commitment to what you put in your body, what you put on your body, the things you eat, how much sleep you get, your levels of stress, how you're handling stress, how you handle your reactions and relations with other people. Are you contributing to the earth, to the world in a positive way? Or are you simply somebody who is breaking things down? It's really, it all begins and ends with you. Are you concerned about your health insurance? Did you see how expensive it's getting to have health insurance? I think the average health insurance cost right now has gone up to over $7,000 to $8,000 a year per person. And that's an average. And, you can avoid being sick if you build a good foundation when you're, as you grow up and as you go through your life. You can build a good foundation and be able to bring that health with you. It's really that simple. Yet we always feel, for some reason, just, I was watching, I like stuff that has meaning and content when I'm online, and I do watching a lot of stuff on the internet, obviously. No more TV, thank goodness. And they had some shows on the war, the Iraq war, the Fallujah, and also some stuff about Ukraine and, the meat grinder that's happening over there, what's happening with all these people. And what's very interesting is if you look at the Iraq conflict and the Fallujah, the soldiers feel like they're impenetrable. In other words, that they'll live forever. They're 19, 20 years old, and they just are, walking through gunfire. And, they just feel like they're, that they can't be touched, that they can't be harmed. Yet we know they can. And it's horrible when it happens. But you see this, I want to say, bravado, this feeling that, you're untouchable when you're young, and that's why there's not a lot of old soldiers, but not because they don't live longer, because they won't take the risks that young people will. And that same mindset goes with people in life during their days, as they go through their teens and into their young adulthood in their 20s and 30s. They know that these choices they're making with foods and choosing not to exercise and prioritizing their careers over their health, in some way they feel, untouchable, unpenetrable, that medicine will save me if and all I really need is to make sure that I have health insurance and I live next to a hospital, that they can save me somehow, that they will repair and correct the foolish life that I've lived in the past. And, and that would be like, somebody getting a knee replacement. They decided to do some heavy duty contact sports, and they get in and they get their knee taken out, strained and sprained through an injury in their younger life. And over time, they never really corrected why it happened, which could be alignment. And then the weight that they put on over the next 10 or 20 years led to this knee that is bone on bone. And they feel that, a knee replacement can help, no doubt. But what if you didn't have that to go to? What if you didn't have a knee replacement? What if they weren't doing all of these procedures? You might have taken better care of yourself. I know for me, when they do a knee replacement, remember the other leg is as old as the one that they replaced, and so is the hip, and so is the foot. And that titanium knee, that $6 million man knee, you still got a 20-cent body if you haven't been taking care of it. And the outcomes aren't great. So it's important to know that the effort and time it takes to maintain your health and to do things is really, really important. So understand that most mainstream knowledge about healthcare and wellness and what you should do when it comes to the medical perspective is something called early detection. Okay? What does that mean, early detection? In other words, you need to get imaging, you need to get x-rays, you need to get colonoscopies, you need to get ultrasound imaging, you need to get your blood work done regularly, you need to get screened for lung cancer, for papillomavirus problems, screenings and examinations. And that is called early detection. That is not healthcare. That's telling you early to try to catch something early enough that you can avoid, the repercussions of a long chronic problem. Now, early detection is important. Don't get me wrong, you guys. All right. I'm not telling you to not get things tested. However, that should not be your form of health care or wellness care or life choices. To wait for, to see if you have a disease and then you're pretty much done. Rarely can they correct the disease that they find with this early detection. And of course it's better than not looking at it at all. So, and I'm not just mentioning this, I do have some statistics on this. And, there's one by Harvard Medical College, Harvard Medical University, had done a statistic on how correct the diagnosis was compared to what led to somebody's death. In other words, what the death certificate, what actually killed them, and what was the diagnosis that they got into the hospital with was over 60 to 70%. The diagnosis that the hospital derived was not what actually killed them. The diagnosis, in other words, the problem that really led to their demise was not what was originally on the records. In other words, diagnostically, they failed to identify the real problem. They were treating the symptoms, which was the diagnostic criteria, with the symptomatology that someone presents with, without really now. So, and how did they know that? Because what they did was, in Harvard, they do autopsies. And when somebody dies at Harvard Medical, they do an autopsy to see the cause of death. And the actual entrance diagnosis was over 60% or even worse wrong. And that's Harvard. So with that, knowing that, how effective is a doctor that works in a private office that, doesn't have the same skills and all the testing. In fact, but there's also some other statistics that show that a doctor's first opinion from a history and a consultation and an exam, like a physical exam, they're like 80% correct as a result of what their findings are and what they believe is going on. So here's another statistic: was when you did get the right diagnosis at Harvard University, if you did get the right diagnosis, how many of those people actually had a cure from the diagnosis and then the treatment that was given to them at the hospital? How many actually affected a cure? In other words, a resolution of the problem. Healing, less than 5%. That's right. Less than 5% were actually able to be cured or healed 100% from the problem. And what that means is that doesn't mean that they didn't extend their life. It doesn't mean that they didn't treat the symptomatology of that problem. They do, and they're good at that, but they never really were able to heal the problem because, it had gone too far. And thus, those people suffer comfortably. They're still suffering, but they try to make them comfortable with blood pressure medication and blood. It's not my genre. I used to know a lot about all the different things that they did to treat symptoms, but that would be the diabetes medications, the things for Alzheimer's and dementia. They can't cure those. The heart disease and the plaquing of the arteries. Giving you statins and lipids to lower triglycerides, and these are the big money makers. And now we have this Ozempic rage. This oh my God, give me a drug to physiologically stop me from eating somehow and stop my digestive tract from working with an injection into my body. Suffering comfortably. That's really what medicine does. You have a problem and they don't really have the true source of the cure because that's usually lifestyle, and you got to do a little more than just show up at the doctor to get better. So they treat you with medications and pharmaceutical agents, and you're basically suffering comfortably. And we're not really comfortable. You know that. So, hello, wake up, wake up, wake up. Don't be a fool. Don't be a mark. Don't be somebody who gets the bad end of the stick. And that doesn't mean that everybody couldn't be helped by a doctor. I've been to the doctor and they helped me enormously. But and I can usually trace it back to something that I failed to do when I was younger. somewhere I chose not to take care of my health or exercise enough or, eat the right foods or remove poisons and toxins. I thought I was like the 19-year-old in Fallujah, that I wasn't going to get shot, and that's why. So now, with all that said, if you're in a pickle and you're starting to realize that your health is fleeting you, and you're starting to feel, as they say in the old washing machines where they used to do the wringer, they used to put the clothes in the wringer to wring it out. And if you got your fingers caught in it, it was called the nip of the wringer. Maybe you felt the nip of the wringer. Maybe your blood sugar jacked up. Maybe you've lost feeling in your feet. You're getting neuropathy and numbness, and maybe your back stiffness is turning into a chronic problem that every time you sit down, you have this horrible shooting pain in your back. Maybe you're getting to the point where you wake up once or twice or even 3 times to urinate. You're anxious, and it just goes on that these problems are happening to you. And I can tell you that you got to get back to basics of life, the basic things that we all need to be healthy and to repair tissue and to live longer are readily available, and you really don't have to buy them. Okay? So what I would say is that what you really need for health, to be healthy and live a long, productive life, most all of those things are free. You shouldn't have to pay for them. All right? And that would be sunlight, water, movement, being careful what you put in your body. Don't put poisons in your body or on your body. Food that's grown in the ground, real food, vegetable gardens, having a connection with a local sourced protein, local beef and local pork and chicken. Go out to Palm City. There's groups of people out there that raise chickens, and you can buy real eggs that aren't filled with poisons and toxins. They have thick shells. And you can source a lot of the protein too. There's farmers, and they have their cattle, and there's co-ops that are involved. You have to pay a little bit. I don't mean it's 100% free unless you want to raise and grow them yourself. But what you really need is free. Is there's no charge for it. There shouldn't be. And the things that you have to pay for, the supplements and these Ozempics and the drugs and the pills and all the things to lower your blood pressure, to raise your blood pressure, to stop your digestion, to speed up your digestion, to close off your urine flow, to open up your urine flow. That's all drugs do. They turn things on and turn things off. If you're on those drugs, you made some mistakes. And if you want to learn more about what you can do to be healthy and wellness, tune into my shows, because that's what I talk about all the time, 24/7, is what you can do right now, today, to be healthier, to live longer, and to have less pain and stiffness. And at this point of my career of observing humanity and where the real problems are, the biggest problem we have right now is obesity. It is a juggernaut. It is everything that could go wrong in your life when it comes to health is predicated and exacerbated by too much body fat, by carrying too much body fat. Okay, and you call it fatted. And, what is a survival mechanism from your ancestors to make sure that you had food over the winter, you had calories over the winter that you could count on, and that in the event of a raid from another tribe or a reason why you got to get out of town right now, which happened a lot 2,000 years ago, you carry calories with you. You make fat. Your body fat is a gift, you guys, a gift from God. Why? Because you can eat and make fat and then utilize those calories when there is no food available for you. And you can get through a time frame. Maybe it's a month, maybe it's a year, maybe it's 2 years with very little food available. And then when you do see food, when you do have a chance to eat food, you can eat so much that you make fat above and beyond your needs for that day, that week, even that month. You can make 100 pounds of fat. You can make 3 pounds to 4 pounds of fat a day, people, just by overeating. It's true. You got to overeat 3,500 calories to make a pound of fat. Most people are eating, on average, 4,000 to 5,000 calories per day. That's the average American, how much food they're taking in calories. Now, of course, most of those calories are empty calories. So when you're looking at calorie intake, a high soda, which is, big gulp sodas, over, 600, 700, 800 calories of empty calories. And then a Starbucks double latte with sugar, and the squirt stuff, 600, 700 calories. Some people drink those 4 or 5 times a day. That's 700, 1,400, 2,800. There's 4 of them right there. And you haven't even eaten any food yet. So it's common to put on 4,000 to 5,000, eating that much food. And you make fat. And it's God-given. It's a natural thing. But what's not normal is to never not eat. You're designed to go periods of time without any food or any nutrition, and then you utilize your fat stores. But you do not utilize a fat store if you're simply skipping meals. You never really get to burning fat. If you're just eating these small amounts all day long, snacking, 5, 6 hours, you feel hunger, so you eat again, a little bit here, a little bit there. You're still not burning fat, you guys, because the body does not burn true body fat until you run out of carbohydrates, until you run out of glucose. And those carbohydrates are fruits and vegetables, and they make glycogen in the liver. The body stores that energy, that glucose, as glycogen. And glycogen is the stored form of glucose. And the body needs glycogen for instantaneous energy. The stress response utilizes glycogen and glucose to get you out of the fire, to get you away from saber-toothed tiger. You're at the watering hole. You're getting a little bit of water with your buddy, your caveman buddy, and a saber-toothed tiger jumps up and pounces on him and eats him in front of you. And he's got a friend. There's another tiger there also. Well, let me tell you, your body is not utilizing fat to get out of that situation, I promise you. Your bodily fat is stored away for after, when you don't have any food. That instant burst of muscular energy to get away from something comes from the body's stored glycogen in the liver. And it's set off by the adrenaline response, by the stress response. Adrenaline is produced by the adrenal gland when you have something that, scares you, or it's when you have stress. Adrenaline shoots into the bloodstream, and this causes a release of cortisol. Now, you've all heard about cortisol. Cortisol is the hormone your body produces to raise blood sugar, to get calories into the cells, into the bloodstream, so your body has the energy to run or to fight or to get away from whatever it is, muscular, and to think. Now, what's very interesting is that glucose, glycogen, flood lasts about 20 hours, less than a day. So if you were, if you were being chased, okay. So let's say the saber-toothed tiger ate your buddy and his buddy's chasing you, his mate, and you got to run like right now. The ability to get away and to run and to use your muscles and to hide and to fight is all being produced by the glycogen stores in your body for the first 20 hours or so. So 20 hours. And if you're extended past 20 hours, you're running for, they're not giving up. They're still chasing you. Those next 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, and 5 days, if you're not eating, that's when your fat starts to power your body. Not the day you missed a meal, you guys. Or if you skipped a meal, you're not burning fat. You burn fat when you run out of glucose and glycogen. Okay? And that, when you start burning fat, that's when your body starts to heal itself. That's when your body produces something called ketones. And ketones is a biomarker that shows up in your urine or in your blood supply that you are now utilizing fat instead of glucose as an energy source. And when you utilize ketones as an energy source, it's a very clean energy source, which does not lead to any kind of insulin dependency or hyperinflammation that glucose causes. Glucose requires insulin to be cleared from the body. So your body's pancreas is working hard to get rid of glucose. When you go past the glycogen stores by not eating for a full day, just one day, you guys, go to sleep. The next day, the second day, you're starting to actually burn your stored fat. And that will show up in your urine as a little rise in ketones. So you can buy these ketone strips. And the ketone strips you can buy them online, you get them right up at the CVS. And if you want to know if you're being fat adapted, if you're starting to become fat compliant, which is where you want to be, you guys. You don't want to be carbohydrate dependent because that requires you to constantly eat all the time. Carbohydrate addiction is the same thing as alcohol addiction, you guys. And when you get addicted to alcohol and you stop drinking for a couple hours, your blood, everything makes you want to go back to it because you feel terrible. You're getting a headache from it. And to get that little buzz back, you go back for that alcohol again. And that's the same thing that happens when you become carbohydrate addicted. If all you're eating is carbohydrates, I shouldn't say that. You can be eating fat also, but if you're still eating carbohydrates and you're not going a full day without eating, you're never really burning that much fat. In order to become fat adapted and to start burning your inner fat layers, you guys, you got to go a day without eating. It's amazing what happens. I'm telling you, this is the easiest way I've ever seen to change body fat and to change metabolism is to learn how to become fat adapted versus carbohydrate adapted. And they call it keto. And it's called fasting. And it's quite powerful. So once you become fat adapted, and the way you know it is by checking with a ketone with these urine strips, urinalysis. And so I've been doing this with myself for about 12 months now. on and off. I did the severe fasting. I did 4 or 5 day fasting with water. I always do water. And then now I'm at a point where I basically really only eat once or twice a day. I don't eat breakfast because I have the blood sugar from the night before. I mean, I am hungry when I get up in the morning, as I always am, but I'm not weak. I'm not like out of my mind, like super hungry. And so what I do, and I was reading about this, and this really works, is I put like butter in my coffee. Right? I never thought I would do that in my life. And I watched a show. It was on this thing called Bulletproof Coffee. And this guy, who's the guy who developed it, went from a 300-pound person down to 160 pounds, changed his whole life by simply putting butter in his coffee and other oils and having that for breakfast. So I'm on my, I told my wife, I said, you better get more butter because I'm going through like half a stick a day here. And that's really my morning breakfast is I have a cup of coffee. I take probably 2 to 3 tablespoons of butter, a big chunk of butter, put it in the cup, heat it up so it, liquefies it. And then I'll put the coffee on top of that. A little bit of stevia. I like a little sweetness. Stevia is fine. And a little bit of cream. And did you know 1 teaspoon of cream is like 40 calories? I didn't know that, but now I do. But so I'm not typically, I am fasting because I'm not eating anything that's carbohydrate, but that coffee has been really, really beneficial at my energy levels. And I'm just not that hungry till about 12 or 1 o'clock. I start to feel hungry again. And then I drink water, and typically I will not eat until at least after 4. And that would be with something that is savory, meaty, fatty food. And I'm down to 198 pounds. My body fat is probably lower than 15%. My inflammation and the swelling around any inflammation is gone from my body. I am a very happy camper. Now, what does that have to do with laser? What am I doing with the laser? So the red light laser, low-level laser, and red light therapy to treat body fat treats the subcutaneous fat. It's dealing with the fat that's on the outside of the body, the stuff that accumulates around your muscle core. So if you were to, make a muscle and feel the muscle behind you, the muscle in your belly there, and then when you were to squeeze the skin in front of that, that's called subcutaneous fat. And that fat does not respond as easily as visceral fat when it comes to fasting and losing weight. Visceral fat surrounds your organs, and it's behind the muscle. It's your metabolically active fat. If you have high visceral fat, you have high probably blood glucose, you have hyperglycemia, you probably have high triglycerides, you probably have high levels of HDL versus LDL. And, difficulty with sleep, swelling around your joints and your knees and your back. You're probably suffering with neuropathy and starting to get some lack of feeling. Maybe your toenails are starting to look deformed or dark. They say, oh, it's bacteria. No, it's blood sugar feeding the bacteria in your nail bed, in your feet. And visceral fat responds beautifully to fasting and these cutting out the carbohydrates. However, if you're not careful, you'll lose too much, and the skin on the outside becomes very, very becomes a problem. And low-level laser treats that subcutaneous fat which is accumulated. kind of like the stuff you wish you could do, like just cut it off and suck it out. Those people that walk around and say that. That's not visceral fat, people. That's subcutaneous. Nobody's sucking out visceral fat. Nobody's cutting out visceral fat. That's a diet and exercise thing, and fasting and reducing blood glucose and tuning up your intake is really, really key for that. And however, you come in with both compartments are usually populated. They're voluminous, we call it. And this is where the Lapex BCS lipolaser, this process that I've been doing, the laser easy way, is really, really effective at getting rid of the stuff that you can't target very easily with diet and exercise. And this is super, super important if you're over 50 years old. If you're under 50, then if you lose weight, you can probably still lose the skin. The loose skin will tighten and tone somewhat. But if you're over 50 and you're getting into your 60s and even into your 70s, you will have lost the muscle tone, the musculature, which is around your subcutaneous fat. Remember, the muscles, your muscle core is really outside of the viscera. You know what I mean? In other words, if you were to open up somebody's intestines and cut through them and disembowel them, there's very little muscle around the organs. I mean, there's smooth muscle. It's too complicated to go into here. But those big skeletal muscles are just that, skeletal muscles. And those muscles are what give you definition. That's what makes you look good. You look good when you see that muscle tone and you see that ripple, that makes you look good. Well, once you hit 50 years old, actually, once you hit 40, you start to suffer something called sarcopenia. Sarco means Latin for muscle, and penia means smaller. So sarcopenia is a loss of muscle tone, gradual due to aging, getting older, and not because you're not exercising, not because you're not eating the right foods. Now you can slow it down and you can, slow the process down and maintain muscle tone if you exercise like crazy. But most of you aren't doing that. So now you're 50, 60 years old. You finally figured out that these carbohydrates aren't serving you anymore. You're not drinking sodas anymore. You've got your Fitbit. You're going to the Pilates class. Maybe you're going to Crunch. We're there at Crunch all the time, by the way. We sign a lot of people from Crunch Fitness. They want that extra help. And even though you're doing 1,000 sit-ups and you ate 500 calories, that midriff, that midsection, it's not changing. That's because it's subcutaneous. It's not visceral. Visceral is behind the muscle. Sub-Q is in front. And as you get older, due to hormonal changes, that subcutaneous kind of disconnects from your metabolism. And, that's why people do all these crazy kind of procedures, the fat sucking, the fat burning, the fat freezing, blasting it with ultrasound, shooting injections into it. It's insane. If you're doing any of that, please give us a call. We do not do that. This is not what we do at the Slim Body. We're using a red light, the same energy that you see in the morning when you step outside and look up at that beautiful sun in the morning. Hopefully you're not looking directly into it. But when the sun first comes up on the horizon, it's red and it's yellow. Very beneficial. It's free. And if you were getting more of that, you wouldn't have as much body fat, by the way. That's well documented. People that live closer to the equator, where there's more sunlight and they get more sun, have lower body fat than people that live farther away from the equator. 40% less body fat, by the way. 40% less heart disease. 40% less dementia. The closer you get to the equator versus way up north, you're healthier people. It's because of the sun. And they're probably more active, getting outside more often. It's no fun to go out into the snow, I mean, you're not exercising as much. And I think that's why people come to South Florida. We live in such a beautiful place, Excuse me. So we're able to harness those same wavelengths, those red lights and those near infrared lights, which is sunlight in the morning for the first 2 or 3 hours and sunlight in the evening for the last 2 or 3 hours. Those wavelengths heal and repair your body. God created the sun to give us life. The sun radiates the earth. Those sun's energy, that nuclear reactor up in the sky that's gazillion times bigger than anything we could imagine, is pumping energy into us in the form of radiant energy. And that energy is taken up by plants, turned into glucose, turned into a starch, a carbohydrate. We eat the plant, and that energy is released into our tissues in the form of ATP. But it originally came from the sun. All energy comes from the sun, you guys. It's just transmuted into different things. Carbohydrates, fossil fuel, fat, proteins. They all contain the energy that was once radiant from the sun. So there's names for that. And one of them is called the way that the body gets energy from the sun in the form of glucose and fat. The mechanism is called oxidative phosphorylation. And then there's another way called gluconeogenesis. We make glucose, called glycolysis. And for that reason, when you shine the sun on your body, when you allow the sunlight to hit your body has receptors called chromophores. They're receptors that they didn't even know existed 20 years ago, you guys, because they didn't realize that light is a signaling molecule. Not only does it give you energy when you eat the plants and the food and the animals that ate the plants, they're giving you that energy. That radiant energy is also going through your body, completely you're translucent to it. I saw pictures of infrared light, and what they did was they took the scientist took his hand, and on the picture it looked for infrared penetration, and the infrared, which is invisible, by the way, you guys don't see infrared. You see red light, it's red. And then the next spectrum of the solar spectrum, which gives us light, is near infrared, infrared, far infrared, which are those saunas are far infrared. You don't see the light, but that's light. And then you get into UVA, UVB, and then you get into the higher levels of light. Okay. The only light that you see with your eyes is it shuts off at red. So you see the blues and the yellows and the greens and the purples, and then it gets into the red light. And then those next spectrums are invisible to your eyes. You can't see them. Yet they are what actually heals and penetrates to create a better homeostasis, a better system. Your body desperately needs that light charge every single day. We've been on the planet. I looked at the earliest humans that they found. 1.2 to 1.7 million years ago, they found humans that could walk upright and had large brains, which shows that they were evolving into what we are today, into humanity. And, they woke up to light. They came out of wherever it was and they had sunlight on them. And then they ate food, which was putting sunlight into them through the starches. And then, of course, they got the fats and the proteins from the animals that they were able to trap or kill or find. And then they would eat carbohydrates when they could grasp them in roots and tubules and shoots and little plants. And here's another really important factor. Your body handles proteins, carbohydrates, and fats better when you eat them on their own instead of mixing them together. When you take a slice of pizza, okay? All the food groups are in a piece of pizza. There's the carbohydrate, which would be the crust and some of the tomatoes. And then the protein would be if you had a little protein on it, like your meatball or your sausage. And then you had the fat, which is really the cheese. Okay, so you're getting all these food groups, but the problem is they're cooked. They're changed. They're denatured. They're devalued through the heating process and the combination of all of them together. So now you have something which is not as healthy than if you ate a piece of starch, a piece of protein, and a piece of fat separately. So try separating your meals. Have a piece, don't always have a starch and a potato and a meat, right? Just have a piece of meat with some fat. And then wait 2 or 3 hours. And then have a carbohydrate, have a salad. But what's happening is, since everything is mixed together, it changes the quality of the food and it loses some of that life energy. Everything that you need to be healthy is free. It really is. You can go out and sit in the red light if you like every morning like I do. I'm going to post a picture of it. I took a picture this morning in my mirror as I was getting ready to come in. And you know what? I'm old. I'm 64. You know that picture of Robert Kennedy where it shows him all fit looking? That's what my picture looked like. I was like, oh my God. And if you had seen me 10 years ago, you wouldn't recognize me. It's called the Slim Body Laser Spa. We're located in Stewart on East Ocean Boulevard. I love talking about this stuff. If you come in there and you want to come in for a consultation, I will provide you with a complete explanation of what we do. I'll demonstrate the machine so you can see it and you can touch it. I'll turn it on. You can feel it. I will show you before and after pictures of real people. I will let you read testimonials. I will perform, if you would like, a body fat analysis called a body impedance analysis. Checks your BMI, meaning how much of your body is now fat. I did a BMI on a really beautiful person. Everybody's beautiful. She's exceptionally beautiful. And she was 56 years old, weighed about 128 pounds, maybe 130, and she was 5'4". Now, height-wise, that's a little, at 140, at that much, that's definitely going to have some high body fat. Well, when I did the examination with the body impedance, which is it's electro, like an EKG tab you put on somebody's foot, and then the other tab goes on the back of their right hand, and then they sit back and it passes a very mild current, like a D battery, through your body, and electricity travels faster and slower depending on how much water content you have. And since fat holds a lot of water, if you have a lot of fat content, you're going to have a very different number when it comes to how quickly the electricity passes through your body. And that gives us your body fat number based on an algorithm of a whole bunch of people. Kind of complicated, but when I got her body fat, it was 54%. Now, you don't have to be a rocket scientist or understand health and wellness or be a doctor at the Cleveland Clinic to know that if you're 58 years old and you're carrying around 54% of your weight as body fat, you got problems. And if you had looked at her, she did not look like a bean, like you see these really morbidly obese people. It was, I called it thin on the outside, fat on the inside, Topi. You will never know that unless you come in and get a BIA with us. So Dr. Rissacker, we're on East Ocean Boulevard, Dr. Treds, Slim Body Laser Spa. Go Google, go on your little Siri phone and say, Dr. Tred Slim Body. It'll come up with my name, my phone numbers, everything you need to get in touch with us. Consultations are always free because I don't want any reason for you not to come in and see what we do.
15 seconds.
So I highly suggest it. And I just want to say thank you to all the people that listen and tune in and comment here as I'm sitting here. I'm sorry I can't comment back to you, but we'll see you soon, and have a great week. All right. Bye-bye. Oh, sorry. I didn't realize you guys were still on here. Thank you for tuning in. Remember, Dr. Tred, Slim Body Laser Spa. Let's see if I got post a comment. Yeah, there we go. Figured it out. That's the ticket, you guys. That is the ticket. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.